Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is Socialing the Distance. We're with Jesse Williams. He's the owner and founder of Sound Running. Jesse, great to see you.
You too, Larry.
And you're in one of my favorite places, Santa Monica. Used to go down there and watch workouts down at the community college and, hang out there once in a while. And it's just a fun environment. So good for you. I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, no, it's great.
You had a tremendous event, paradigm changing one 2 weeks ago. Sound Running the 10. Now, am I introducing that correctly? Is that
Yeah.
Okay. There you had two world leaders in the 10,000 meters. You had Grant Fisher with his 26:33.84. You had Elise with her 30:14.66. Elise just missed Molly Huddle's American record. She put herself ahead of her coach, Shalane Flanagan, which I love, and I hope she's giving Shalane a little bit of trouble. Mm-hmm. And Grant and Mo were just, it was fascinating to see, them together for 24.85 laps,
Yeah.
And it came down to some absolute crazy finish. What were your first impressions of the event?
I would say relief. A lot of planning goes into something like that, and it's different than other events. Other events, there's competition and there's a bunch of moving parts, and this is much more centered around qualifying times. And for this specific time was trying to go for these records. And what goes into a meet like that is a little different than what just goes into a meet where just people are just racing and they're showing up and they're just kind of, going through the season of, getting their kicks in. Right. And so I would say when it comes to the pacing, when it comes to having the right weather and just hoping everything comes together, seeing it all actually happen was, I guess, justification for all the stress that went into it and relief afterwards. Because when you're doing something that's only about times and these people fly from all over the world here to come to this and to race, and you feel in a weird way that like, oh, I owe these people. I need these people to run fast, and I want that to work for everybody. And, we've all been there as athletes ourselves. And then now to see these people, and then on top of that, for people to run as fast as they did and to break records, it's a very special moment. Somebody asked a couple of weeks ago, like, did you expect that? And I was like, American record is the fastest ever. So no, did we expect? We thought it was possible, but to say we expected it, maybe the athletes expected it, or maybe Jerry did, but I just, I knew how hard that was, and everything had to be perfect. And to see almost both of them go down shows you how special, of a night it was. So we were really relieved that it all came together, and a lot of people got PRs and got their qualifiers. And so not just the records, but,
There's a story that I recall talking to the meet team at Prefontaine when they were trying to do a 10,000. And I think it was with Mo and Galen, and how frustrated they were trying to find someone who would go 5,000 meters and then someone who could go 8,000 meters, and that is, talk to us about trying to bring together pacemaking for a situation like this. That's got to be difficult.
Yeah. it's difficult enough that a lot of people, wondered why we didn't talk about it more and about the record attempt. And because honestly, until like maybe 2 days before the meet, maybe even, we didn't have all the pacers lined up, because originally we looked out of the US and we were looking for people, because there's just a lot of the best runners in the world are, not always, to find somebody that can go through 5K in 13:20 or 15 flat. You probably, if they're not already in the race, then, you have to go and look far and wide for that person. And so early on, it was looking across the globe, and visas were a really big issue because of COVID. And so there was a lot of like negotiations, and we thought this person or that person or whatever. And then we got down to the wire, and it was like, okay, well, can we find anybody? And, I would say we're in a very unique situation. And Jerry and the Bowerman Group is in a unique situation right now where they have so much talent on that team that it was just lucky where there's some selfless athletes like a Woody Kincaid and people like that on the team where they're just like, hey, if I can get some help, I'll get them to 7K or, 7K or 8K. And to say I'll do that and sacrifice, this is the Olympic trials champion, to say I'll do that. And another thing is to be able to do it. Right. And so there's not many people there's not many people in the world that could take that to 7, 8K. And then, so if you think about the men's race specifically, like, Ollie from the OAC group, he came back after his 1500 and did the first 2K of work. He helped so that Josh Thompson can make the 4K. And then after that, Sam Atkin took over and made it a couple, he went to 5+K. And then it helped get Woody to 7.5. And meanwhile, those, Mo and Grant were just sitting there chomping at the bit. And they were obviously in very special shape, and they were ushered through 7.5K. And I would say in texts exchanged after the meet, one constant theme wasn't talking about the men's race. It was really wishing we had been able to do more for Elise, because she showed out there that she might be in 2950 something shape right now had she had the equivalent pacing.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I mean, my first comment and looking at that race and taking a little time, she is, oh my God, I never thought I'd say that we're going to see an American. I think she can run 29:30,
Yeah, I think she can. And I think similar to the jumps that Grant made in the last year, where the mileage is under him, he's getting stronger and he's getting stronger. I think she's going to continue to see the same thing. Grant came to our meet last year, ran 27:11, and it was a really good race for him. And the very next year, he comes and runs 26:33. But you saw the shift. We did the Michigan Ekiden with the Hansons in November. Am I blanking? No, October. And no, November. And when we were out there, these guys, most everybody's in base training phase. They've taken a ton of time off. And it's kind of it was like a hilly, rainy, windy 10K loop that Grant ran. He just went out there and jogged like 28:40 by himself that day. And I remember at that moment, I said, did he really just run 28:40? Like, because Bowerman was winning. And so when he got it, the sash on the last leg, he was already winning by so much that he just went and just jogged a 28:40 by himself around the lake. And I said to Jerry, I was like, have you guys done anything? He goes, no. And I was like, he's going to do something special in the 10. And he goes, yeah. He goes, if everything comes together, I think we're going to go for it. And it's funny, we had that conversation in November because we knew Mo was there, because last year Jerry thought about putting Mo in the race. And he's like, the rest of these guys are just trying to get their qualifiers, and Mo's like in 26:30 shape. And he goes, I just can't do that to them. He's like, having him just take off like that will kill everybody's confidence. And that's not what this race is. So he knew Mo was there. And I think Grant made such a good jump, got a little stronger before the trials, got a little stronger over the winter, and then went to altitude and, showed indoors that he was possibly ready to do this. And I think Elise is in that same category where she debuted last year, ran 30-40, something like that last year, her and Carissa. And obviously, Carissa's the second fastest American over 5K ever, and they ran each other to the line. I think had Carissa been healthy, and then we had a pacer a little further, and they had that dynamic that Grant and Mo had, who knows what we would have seen. And so it's but that's what sticks with you. It's not the American, Canadian, Australian, Scottish record. It's at least being 1 second off that you're like, how did we miss that? And we'll do right. We'll get her back next year and we'll really go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. The for our viewers, 25Ks at this level are rather esoteric. For years, it was just the Peyton Jordan. And then I would go over to London to watch the night of 10,000 personal best that the whack jobs over there put on for a while, where they had a little beer garden and stuff, and that's where I got to meet Nick Rose. But they had some fast times. And it was mostly built around over there trying to get a European or a world qualifier. And then they added the Euro Cup to it. I don't know if, and the Peyton Jordan was the one I went to for 15 straight years. I remember when Meb set his American record and Bob Kennedy walked off the track at 8K, totally blowing my mind. I think he only dropped out of 2 races his entire career, but it was just to see that respect for the distance. And what you guys have done now is you had that one under your belt last year, which was fantastic. I think this one is just even more incredible. But what I'd like our viewers to understand is that you started all this during the pandemic. And one of the things that I'm trying to appreciate is I remember you saying a couple of things to me about, well, I've got to have people in a hotel for a while. And I'm going, okay, you're having people in hotels for a week, taking care of their meals, finding them training stuff. This is much more than just doing a one-day track meet. How did you put this all together?
We originally, our first event was the year that the Worlds was in Doha.
Yeah, 19, right?
It was so late. And so US Champs was at the very end of July, which means there was like a 5-week gap on the US calendar leading up to USA's. And I was talking to a couple coaches, and I think maybe even I was on the phone with maybe Danny Mackey or somebody like that. And they were just like, yeah, we may try to put on our own race. We may try to do something. We just need to race. And I just kind of had this like wild urge to, I was like, okay, well, what if we put on something here? And I've been talking to John Marcus about some stuff, and he was looking at doing something. He had some family stuff come up, and I just said, hey, I'm gonna run with this idea, And so we put on this meet. It was our first kind of sunset tour event, and Under Armour came on board that first year, and we kind of saw this, and we're like, okay, this is needed. This isn't a one-off. We should do more of this. And we had really good response from coaches and agents, and they're like, hey man, if you did more of these, we'd be here. And so we started Kickoff 2020, where we were going to have this track meet, and then we were going to have our 3 sunset tour events during the summer, and that was going to be our season. Obviously COVID hit, and then it became trying to have a meet at all. And so worked with a bunch of other meet directors and kind of figured out how to safely put on an event, or at least take the best measures you can. And so we did, a couple sunset tour meets, 2 sunset tour meets that summer of 2020, and then finished out the year with our 5Ks and 10Ks. We call it the track meet. The first time we did that was December. And it was more just looking at the schedule and going, okay, the window for world qualifying opens December 1st. We're going to put a meet on that very first weekend. We know that there's no fall road races. We know that there's no marathons. We know there's no track season. There's no cross country season. So if we put this on the calendar, everybody can shoot for it. We're unbelievably lucky. That's actually what led us to finding this facility that we use now at J. Sarah. They're a private school, and they had been navigating the pandemic in a really smart, successful way, where they had continued to have classes, continued to have sports, and they were, their kids were monitored really well. And so we approached them about having this event, and they were like, yeah, if you guys are following USATF procedures and, it's on a night where there's no school and there's no whatever, then and they let us do it. We put it on. I think California shut down the next day. We navigated that winter, and that's kind of during that winter was when we did our first 10, which was purely a handful of athletes who had been training over the winter. They wanted to get their times. It's like Ben True, the Bowerman crew. We had an athlete, McCoglin, come over from the UK and run the women's side. So there was very few people. I think it was maybe 7 guys and 8 girls that raced, and everybody ran incredibly fast. And so we looked at that for next year and we're like, well, there's a place for that on the calendar. That kind of late indoor, get my qualifier, shut it down, get ready for outdoors. And we that night of 10Ks is a really cool event. You know, it's this community thing. It's elites all the way to community. And I've heard so many cool stories about that. And I feel like I've heard or seen online so many people talk about how special that is. And I would be lying if we said that we weren't just taking a page out of that book and saying, hey, we're going to do that here. That's a really cool idea. Why can't we try that? And that's essentially what we did with that. So yeah, I mean, kind of made our way very stressfully through the pandemic. And not that we're, you know, I don't want to ever say we're out of the woods, because I feel like, you know, you just never know. But we had fans at a meet for the first time, you know, 2 weekends ago. We haven't been able to do that. We've had to literally hide the address for where the meet was going to be.
That cracked me up, the other ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it kind of strategically worked out, because there was once or twice where we had to switch venues, and the athletes never knew. So it never stressed them out, because we never told them where it was. But it's so nice to be able to invite fans back into the, you know, the arena and at the track and get that. And it was perfect timing to have so many fans show up on a Sunday night, where we had changed it from Saturday to Sunday for the, you know, for the athletes, and to give them that American record and Canadian record, and just, you know, to give them that night where there was also some fanfare, you know, not just an empty stadium. And kind of, I'm blown away at how well and how fast everybody ran in Tokyo. I cannot imagine being at that pinnacle of your sport and being in front of an empty stadium. And kudos to everybody that did so well and ran so fast there. It's mind blowing. It shows how tough these people are.
No, I agree. Talk to me about your streaming video, because I really like what you're doing there. You're putting together a very good quality, very high quality video, and you're getting 5,000 to 8,000 folks to support it. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's in that range. It's been lower, it's been higher. You know, that also came, and I would say, I don't know that if we hadn't had the pandemic, that we'd be there. You know, all these meet directors, we got together during the pandemic and we were sharing kind of ideas around safety and whatever it was. And you had to be really nimble and kind of figure things out on your own. And the, you know, the Tracklandia crew had done a couple of their own, the big friendlies, and a couple of these really small events with just teams in the Northwest. And we were talking to them, and they put those up on YouTube, and we were having the kind of eternal free versus paid, you know, conversation. And our thing was, I was really fighting for the paid. And it sounds funny, but I was really fighting for that, because I was saying, hey, look at the revenue stream and look at what FlowTrack and Runner Space have done for our sport. And people give the subscription and all these things a hard time, but they've created not only so much content for our sport, which we need, and so much entertainment, but they've created so many jobs in our industry. And the more jobs and the more money in our industry, the better. And I hope that's my like big push in like my soapbox, is the more money in our sport, the better, folks. You know, it's like free doesn't really float the sport. And so we eventually, and you know, in our meet director group, I would say I was pretty strong about that. And a lot of people are a little bit more altruistic, like, let's do it for the fans. And I think the way we really got everybody to hold hands on it was when we said, well, what if we do like a pay-per-view? We're like, maybe, you know, but we're sharing the revenue with the athletes. And, you know, the Olympics, you know, they're billions of dollars are of advertising and rights fees and whatever are sold on the backs of these runners, and on the image of these runners, and they don't get a penny. And our thing was, well, we're going to share that revenue, and it varies. Sometimes it's 100%. Sometimes it's 100% after our cost. It costs X amount to fly everybody out to produce it. Okay, well, every penny after that is to the athletes. Sometimes we get a sponsor to cover that, and we can do the 100%. But that's when everybody kind of clicked and they go, oh, if we're sharing this with the athlete, which athletes run the sport, right? And if we can bring the fans in and make them be a part of this. And this was also during the pandemic when these YouTubers were having boxing matches, they were fighting and they're doing pay-per-view for tunes of, millions and millions per fighter, and advertisers are, coming in, and just thought, like, what a cool idea and chance for our sport. And kudos to Tracklandia, who, we did our first 2 meets with that crew, and they came in and we literally strung it together, figured it out. We did it on YouTube at first because we just were like, hey, we're not doing pay-per-view till we think we have something valuable enough. And by the time we got to our track meet in May last year, we kicked it off. We did our first pay-per-view, and I think the athletes really loved it because they thought, okay, well, I can get behind this. The money goes to us. Okay. And, my friends can watch this, and it's, we really made sure the process takes, like, if you have Apple Pay or you have a credit card stored on your computer or phone, it takes literally 10 seconds to sign up. And so it's been something that I think it's new, and I don't know that it's like revolutionary, but it's cool for track. It shares money with the athletes, and Tracklandia, who really is behind the platform that we're using for this, they just want to make it better and better, better. They're trying to add in fan voting. They're trying to add in all these different things where sponsors can come on and do something different. And I applaud anybody trying to do something new for the sport, and going against, this old school, established sport, trying to do something new. And we were really happy to be working with Tracklandia with our events and to be able to do that, because we just know no matter what, it's going to push the sport forward. There's always going to be a space for, all the big guys, ESPN, NBC, Flow Track, Runner Space. They've done so much for the sport. I mean, and I think maybe what we're doing pushes them to even be better. And that's good for everybody, right? Raises all tides.
I want to stop you right here because this is where I was hoping you were going to get here. I share with you the idea of bringing money into the sport. Huge. My feeling has always been, when the shoe companies are doing well and they start sharing their love, it's good for everybody. So we try to build it up, right? I also think that Flow Track, Runner Space, Tracklandia, the whole group is good. A sponsor brought up to me a couple of weeks ago, what about, and I hate to use the term, crappy coverage of the sport? And that's not what I see you guys doing, but I've seen a couple track meets in the last year and a half where I wanted to, bang my head against the wall because people didn't appreciate it. The difference with what you guys are doing is the folks at Tracklandia, the folks at Runner Space, Flow Track, get the sport and love the sport and appreciate the nuances. And what you guys have been able to do is even give us a more of an intimate view. And I think it's why people are really getting into your show and to your events. It's not all about money, but money has to be there. One of the toughest things for me in the biz, and I've been in the business, is I call it begging for dollars. I spend time every day trying to raise money to keep my media stuff going, to bring new opportunities in, to bring in new writers, that kind of a thing. You've got to be doing that too. How do you look at the whole idea of trying to raise money to do your events? Is it a challenge? Is it something you see as part of the game? Do you have a group of people that are supporting you? I mean, I'm just curious about how you're approaching it.
I would say a little all of the above. We've had initially it was me talking to people in the industry and saying, "Hey, we have this." We had some people really early on that bought into us, and Under Armour came on right away for that first Sunset Tour, and then we were able to sign a 3-year deal for the Sunset Tour with them. And so they, a company that big coming on board with a vision that early, that helps set you up. And then you're like, okay, we have like a foundation here. Where can we go from there? And I think, we were able to execute a couple things during the pandemic, which, gave us a really nice, I guess, presentation of, hey, here we are, here's what we can do, and there wasn't much happening in the space in terms of events. So I think a lot of brands and a lot of people took notice, and we had people reach out. But at that same time, we work with some people that shop stuff around for us with their contacts. We have our own contacts. We have people that come to us. But yeah, I mean, we're looking for partners that want to be in this, not with one-offs. We would love to be like, oh, we have these 5 partners and they're our 5 partners for everything. But we also have very, very big vision, and there's a lot of money involved to do that. I mean, prize money alone, if you want to really put on a good meet, if we want to compete with the best in the world, we need $100K prize money to start. And we need, like another $50K for facility, timing, hotels, shuttles, whatever it is. And then you staff, and there's social media, and there's advertising, and there, all these things. And so to do this right, yeah, we need real partners. Yeah, and so we're mining all those fields.
That's great. No, I'm really proud of what you're doing, Jesse. And it's I met you when you were working at Brooks, and you were the sports marketing dude, and you really built it into a department, and you helped them figure out, oh my God, Brooks has something to say. And I remember the article in Wall Street Journal, which totally pissed off every other brand when you guys made the front page of the business section, and you had put together, Brooks Beast and that whole scene. And it was a totally different approach than anybody had ever tried before. And that's what I expect from you. So it's kind of nice to see you doing it. Are you enjoying this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's the best part of it. Is when I was at Brooks, my favorite part of my job was when we got to create something new, or when we got a new project. So it didn't even have to be creation. It was just sometimes a new project. So maybe it was, we were going to the Olympic trials and we were trying to do some like guerrilla marketing, or we were throwing an after party. We wanted to be the after party, or we were creating this high school meet, the Brooks PR Invitational, and we were trying to think, what would a high school kid want? The Brooks Beast, it was like, okay, well, there's all these amazing teams out there. If we're going to keep up at all on recruiting, we need a track team to complement the distance marathon team that we have at Hanson's. And so, but those projects always, I was so excited every time we had a new project. And I would say the cool thing about running your own business is that you can have that moment every day, or you can have an idea and they don't all work. And some of them, like, there's been some times where I really thought I had like the idea, and I thought, oh my gosh, wait till we tell people. And then it was not good at all. And it's humbling, but at least it's like, well, at least I tried that and it didn't work. And then something else that we'll do will. But yeah, I would say it's very enjoyable to be able to have an idea and just, let's try it. And to then see some of those ideas come together. They don't all come together, but sometimes they do. And, either way, though, it's really fun.
Give me the 2 or 3 biggest lessons you've learned from putting on your meets.
I would say lessons slash takeaways is, as a meet director, I feel like I can pinpoint one of the biggest problems in track and field right now. And I don't know how to fix it, but I think we have ideas on how to fix it. So one of the biggest problems is, I know right now where Steph Curry is playing for all 82 games of the season. I can go buy tickets. I know, barring injury, who's going to be playing, who's starting, and where they're going to be. In track and field, it is the Wild West. I mean, there's some people that they put an event on their calendar and they talk about it, for a month. But even some of the biggest stars in our sport, they won't have a plan of what they're going to run, or they won't know until like Wednesday, and the meet's on Saturday, or they're coming to your meet and then they decide on Thursday they're not. And just imagine, part of what we talked about with the pay-per-view and the fighting and whatever is, those guys would talk crap with each other for 2 months leading up to their fight. They had all this back and forth, and I don't watch fighting at all. I don't care at all about MMA, but I would pay attention because you just couldn't not hear about it.
Oh yeah, no, that's the thing that drives you crazy, right?
And in track, we can do that, but we can't because we don't. So there's some events out there like pre-announced all their stuff today. They have all these fields. They're in a very nice position of, that's a Nike event. Nike has probably 75% of the athletes, and most of them are contractually obligated that if Nike wants them there and they're healthy, they're racing. So kudos to them. They can build that. You look at the two best events every year, it's US champs and worlds or Olympics. And the reason is everyone has to come, for weeks and months, who's going to be on the starting line, and you can talk about it and you can build up the matchups. If we were able to do that and do that a little better. So that's one thing. That's one big takeaway, is that's such a huge problem in our sport. I think the only way it's fixed is if, there's this contingent of events, and there's like a policy, and it's like, you don't make any money unless you commit this far out, and you got to do this, this, and this. That's very hard to do. I'm not saying it's not possible, but that's a big takeaway. Another takeaway is how hard it is to build a product in track and field. And there's not a lot of products, but a track in itself with all these different disciplines, and to be able to do them justice, that's really hard. A night of distance running, okay, that's very specific. A pole vault, street meet, that's really specific, and that's very successful. And I think when I think of field events, I hate the idea that I'm watching a field event across the track on the other side of the stadium. I think field events should be up close and personal, so you can see how spectacular these feats of either strength or power or, finesse, like all these things. And I think those don't always lend themselves to being in the same place at the same time, right? Like, how are you watching this, and really taking this race in, but at the same time, really paying attention to what's happening in the dynamics of the long jump or the shot or whatever, it's all happening at once, and their camera goes here and camera goes here. And I also think, like, if you're a true fan of track and field, maybe you do pay attention to every single sport. You love every single event. But I think it is segmented fan-wise. I went to Texas Relay so many years in a row when I was at Texas Tech, and the state meet, and like when it's distance time, everybody leaves. And it was because they were there for the sprints and the 4x4s and the 100 and 200. And I would say that the people that are left in the stands, or the people that come I don't know, like there's something about that. And I think that is a part of our sport that we're going to have to figure out, is the packaging of it to produce a product that fans want to consume. I love track and field, 10-day Olympic trial, all day heats, prelims, semi, whatever. That's a lot, even for like all of us hardcore track fans, and if you want, I think, more fringe fans, or, some of these other people to get involved, I think we have to package it differently. So I think that's another takeaway. Other than that, I would say, like, just the realization of how many different people are out there doing something really good in our sport. And I have this moment where sometimes I look at it as competition, and then like 2 seconds later, I look at it as like, no, let's all work together and let's make this better. And I would say when you're in corporation, you're so focused on like this corporation, this is what we're doing. We're going to win. We're going to be the best. We're going to do whatever. And when you're more kind of outside of it and you're non-biased, it's interesting the way you look at it and how you think, well, work together and make this good. I love it when I see on-sign a bunch of people and start a team. Love it when, Brooks does, like I'm always, there's just, I kind of feel like it's a nice to be a fan of everybody now and not be just,
No, it's cool. I recall a story I wanted to share with you, which I think supports where you're at about the segments. About 15 years ago, when Rich Knaw, who's in Atlanta Track Club now, was still at the New Balance Indoor, which was back Reebok Indoor. I went to him and I said, hey, man, I've got $5,000 to help your meet. What can you do for me? So we're looking around. He goes, we're going to do the shot put really cool. We're going to put it on TV just by itself. So I took both signs and I had runningnetwork.com put on the end bars where Cadena was throwing the shot. We got 500,000 impressions in the 2 hours it was on TV, and my servers went down. And it was the coolest thing to me. It was a total revelation because at the time, I believed most of my viewers were total distance geeks. And what it told me was how many field eventers, and I love to do field and track now just to mess people up because of that whole opportunity. No, what is cool is, like you said, there's these segments. There's the pole vault meets. There's the distance meets. There's the sprint meets. USHF tried to do, I think, a sprint and up to 800 meet, which I think is a great thing. And I celebrate the innovation. Can you share with us any innovations you're going to try this year, or we got to get some surprises?
I would say one of the innovations, and it's not innovation as much as it's this idea we've had for a while on how to do something different for the sport. So one of the things was, I was watching NCAA cross country championships, and I think the start went kind of, the visual of the start went kind of viral to some degree.
Wasn't that cool?
Yeah, and it's such a cool thing, and you think, okay, this is one of the greatest meets in high school. It's one of the greatest meets in college. And I think a lot of us, cross country is why I went out for the sport. I loved the team thing. I loved all this. And so we were like, well, it sucks that it kind of just ends when you finish college. Like if you're lucky enough to make a world cross team or something, you're on Team USA, but now that's every other year. And it's not really your team, it's your country, but and so, and not everybody really goes. Like you might make the team and you still might not go. And so last year we kicked it off. This year we're going to go really big, but we do this. It's called the Cross Champs, and the idea is there's all these pro teams now, and we're going to basically put on a cross country championships for these professional teams. Now I know that there's club cross, and that club cross has been around forever. I've run it. It's a great meet. But we realized, we're like, well, these pro teams aren't really running that. Like if they do, they show up and they go like 1 through 5, and Bowerman shows up 1 year, and Hansen show up, and Brooksby show up 1 year, and NAZ, and whatever. And so we're like, well, what if we just took all those pro teams that exist now? Reebok, BAA. I mean, there's just if you think about how many teams there are now, and then there's they're not branded teams, but the Roots and the Team Boss and the, could we do a cross country championships for pro? This year was our first year. I think it was a long year for a lot of people where when they shut down, they shut down. And so we had a lot of people that were excited about it, but they're like, not going to do it this year, next year. And so I would say we're all in on, our goals have every single team show up and for everybody to bring their big guns and to really do a cross country championships. The cool thing that I think that can make it really fun this year is we're going to do it in Austin, Texas at the running event.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
we've been working with Trials and Miles, which, they're very similar to us. They put on events during the pandemic, navigated all of that. They did anything from road races to ultras to, you know, um, kind of local challenges. And so we both had kind of the same vision at the same time for this event. We jumped on a call and decided, okay, we're all in, let's do this. And we originally wanted to do the running event last year, but they didn't know, pandemic wise, Austin, they were getting some pushback on the park and different things. And we just said, okay, first year we're gonna do something else. But this next year, December 1st, we're gonna do cross champs at the running event. And I think it has the possibility of being something really big, because if we can turn it into a yearly event. But how often do the stakeholders at these companies get to watch the pros actually compete? I think of Brooks, and I think of like the CEO, Jim Weber, or some of the VPs. Like, they got to see things here and there, but they never really, like, they got to see the Brooks PR Invitational in person and they loved it. And maybe they watched, Nick win online, or, they saw one event local, but they came to the trials. But if we yearly were doing this cross country championship, and all the stakeholders at every major company, plus all the media, all of you guys will be there, all of these store owners, which are the super fans, obviously, of our sport, and their employees. And then on top of that, the Austin community, which, we can put an event on in Austin. Obviously, they're, very, used to really big events there and unique challenges. And so we're excited about what that could be. I wouldn't say that's like, revolutionary or anything, but I do think it has the ability or the opportunity to be such a big thing for our sport, and by big thing, I mean really entertaining. It's 2 races, men's and women's, all teams. You can get behind your team. If you're Seattle, you're behind the Beast. If you're Portland, you got a couple teams to choose from. If you're Flagstaff, Boulder, like, you got these Boston teams, like, you got these contingencies. And I think that has the ability to do something and kind of get people on board and get maybe new fans interested. And I'm excited about what that could look like.
I like that. Well, we'll be checking in with you about that event, and we will be checking in with you also about, you just launched a running apparel line, and I wanted to give you a couple minutes to talk about that and how that's different from other apparel lines that we have in the sport right now.
Yeah. As soon as we launched this, or prior to launching this, I feel like every time I was on Instagram or anything, I saw like everybody seems to have their own apparel, and there's all these like pop-up apparel brands, whether it's casual clothing or running clothing or just fan gear. And for us, we wanted our own stuff. We love, like, we feel good about the brand. We think the brand is a good ethos, and we wanted the ability to, every time we made a hat or a shirt or something just for staff, people were like, how do I get one of those? And so we thought, okay, we got to do this. We got to do it right. We were lucky enough, like I said, we've had people approach us, and Pacers, if you know Chris Farley very well, Pacers, he's a guy who's always looking around the curve. He's always, what's next? How do I do what nobody else is doing? What can I do that's different? And he came to us and said, hey, I love what you guys are doing. We want to support your events, kind of just in a marketing angle. And we said, okay, well, we want to build apparel, but we're not a warehouse, and we're not, we're not a shipping magnet. So like, we don't, could we share some synergies here? And, that relationship kind of molded into what we have now, which is we have this Apparel for the Sport project is what we call it. And it's really a partnership between these two groups, where they're really helping us get in front of more people, and they're helping fulfill it and house it. And we're lucky enough to have a team design it and build some purpose around it. And, for us, the reason we call it Apparel for the Sport is everything we do feeds back into our events and feeds back to the athletes, whether it's travel, whether it's prize money, whether it's just more experiential things we can do for the athletes at our events. And so those apparel sales go right back into our events and right to the athletes. And I think we're being able to potentially show that here in 6 months to say, hey, we did this much in apparel sales. It went here. We used it for this. Like, that's pretty cool. And to be fair, that's really cool for us and that's great for our events, but it's branding. We love that our sound running stuff's out there, and we're not, this is for us. This is like, we think we're this, and we believe that we're this non-competitor, just after your run, throw on a sweatshirt, throw on a hat, throw on shorts. That's kind of our goal with the line, that your meat t-shirt, your cotton poly blend t-shirt, whatever it is, you have a lot more stuff coming. And we're lucky enough that, we talked about Craig was one of the people behind the apparel. And, after being at Adidas, heading up, their apparel lines with a London Marathon, Berlin Marathon, Boston, creating those apparel lines, those collections, working on the technical apparel side, both at Brooks and Adidas. We feel like we're this really small company with this like really special talent. And so we're not just like creating this stuff and it's like promo stuff. It's like, no, the people behind it, a very, specific skill set and expertise. And so I think there's a lot that's going to come from that. Yeah, we're excited about it.
Well, we'll make sure we get the links up with the video. And Jesse, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Larry.
Look for your next event is the first weekend in April. Is that correct?
May 6th. So we were going to do a college meet. NCAA changed some of the rules around how many events you have to have. And we're not quite there execution wise yet. So we wanted to focus on our pro meet May 6th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. We will get that out. Jesse, thank you so much. And thanks for your time today, man.
Yeah. Thanks,
this is Larry Eder with Socialing the Distance. We featured Jesse Williams, who is the owner and founder of Sound Running. And Jesse, thanks a lot. It was a lot of fun.
Larry.
Congrats on the 10 event, man. It really inspired me. So thank you again.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Larry.
Take care. Stay safe. Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is your favorite program in the entire podcast universe, if I may be so modest. It is Socialing the Distance. And today we feature Jesse Williams, the owner and founder of Sound Running. Jesse started out at Brooks and was the sports marketing dude, and then became the sports marketing director there, putting on such events as the PR Invite, bringing on such groups as Brooks Hanson's Distance Project and the Brooks Beast. I remember reading the front page of the business section of the Wall Street Journal when the Brooks Beast group came out, totally annoyed many of the other brands because Brooks was standing out as they've grown to that billion-dollar company. But that's where Jesse kind of got his teeth in sports marketing. He has a love for running, obviously a very talented runner himself. And 2 weeks ago, he and his team at Sound Running put on one of the finest bespoke events, finest events, I think, in the world, the 10. In the spirit of the night of 10,000 meter PBs in London that I went to for so many years, coming back this year, Jesse and his team put together two world leaders in the 10,000, Grant Fisher, 26:33.84, a new American record, Mo Ahmed, 26:34.14, a new Canadian record. And what has not gotten the respect it deserves is Elise Cranny's solo 30:14.66, number 2 all-time U.S. She's just in front of her coach, Shalane Flanagan, and just behind Molly Huddle's time from the 2000, I believe it was 2017 London or 2016 Rio. I'll have to go back and double check that. In second place on the women's side was Dominique Scott, one of our faves, who ran 31.00.10, running 8K by herself. Elise had run 7K by herself. But these meets were put together by Jesse and his team. And we interviewed him today. and we asked him some good questions. Take the time to view. Bring a notebook along because there's a lot there. This is a class, a Harvard Business Review class, in how to put together major events during a pandemic. Jesse's got it. His team's got it. And his next new project will be apparel for the sport. Jesse is teamed up with one of his big buddies, Craig Vanderhoff. Craig Vanderhoff is one of the 1 or 2 or 3 people in the entire world who get sports apparel. He was the head of Adidas Global Sports Apparel for, half a decade? And among the collections he's put together are the London Marathons, the Boston Marathon, and he's put on Olympic apparel too. His stuff, if you've worn Adidas product, you've been in Craig's product. So now he's taking that and doing a bespoke brand. Bespoke, for people who don't understand, it means a personalized brand, a very special brand. And I use that term out of respect for what Jesse and Craig are doing. In an upcoming Socialing the Distance, we will have Craig and Jesse speaking about apparel. But today it was the Jesse Williams show, and he gave us a real lesson in how to put on a small, specialized killer track meet. We look forward to seeing their next event May 6th. This is Larry Eder, RunBlogRun, signing off.